Hey everyone, how's it going? This is the Bald Metal Nerd coming at you with another uh, lovely video. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about a topic that has been debated in the metal community for a while, and for a long while, really, I guess decades at this point. And that is, I'm going to talk about bands dramatically changing their sound or not, right? So I'm going to talk about three different bands. They're all pretty different from one another, but they've all have done various things with their sound. Now, one of these bands, I don't really feel changed very much stylistically, but I'll get to that when I get to that band. So the first band I'm going to talk about uh, is a band that started out pretty much as, for lack of a better term, a relatively straightforward death metal band, right? They just start out just kind of straight up death metal, right? And they got a base of support from that, but they changed their style quite a bit over the years from those beginnings, right? And I'm talking, of course, about Amorphous. Now, they are far from the only band to do this. There's been countless bands that have done this. Probably a band that changed more dramatically is Paradise Lost. You know, they had some straight up synthish pop albums almost. Of course, have gone much more back in the metal direction past several albums, but you know, essentially, Amorphous lightened their sound quite a bit, threw tons of progressive elements into their sound, into their uh, artistry, for lack of a better term. And now, pretty much, I think of Amorphous not primarily as a death metal band, but I think them primarily as a progressive metal band. Yes, there are death metal elements in it, but they're not just a straight death metal band anymore. They basically change styles pretty dramatically. Now, they did stay in the metal realm, which is important. Not all bands that have done this did, but you know, obviously they've had much greater success, and I think it's what they wanted to do as artists. It's basically, you know, what was in the back of their head, you know, back in their mind. I think that's what they wanted to do, and I think they've largely have had great results doing this, right? I think they did a great job chasing that type of music, and I think they found a great balance between progressive and aggressive elements, and I think they're an absolutely fantastic band. And I'm glad they did what they did. And them and many other bands of their ilk, again, they are far from the only ones. In fact, there's a lot of bands like this where I truthfully, you know, I would listen to their death metal work and be like, it's okay, but it was nothing spectacular. But when they branched out, Anathema is another example of this. They branch out and do more progressive things. I end up liking their progressive stuff a lot more. But I'm sure there are some diehards that only liked the early material or whatever. So that is one way, and a fairly common thing that happens with bands, right? So there's that. So basically, you start off as extreme and you get more progressive over time, yada, 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 right? Now, this next band I'm going to show off, I don't think stylistically they've changed very much. I think they've pretty much have stayed in their lane. But the way this band has grown is they've just refined their form. They just continue with every new album. They just refine their formula more and more. They do go through change, but it's more like um, what's what I'm looking for? Just an evolution in a. When you see this, ironically, just sharpening the axe a bit for this band. I think they just make their formula a little bit better on each album. And that is Amon Amarth, right? Pretty much when you think of Amon Amarth, you know exactly what you're getting. You're getting soaring death metal, for lack of a better term. I would almost call them a combination of, I would call them death power metal, right? Obviously, the vocals sound nothing like power metal, but some of the melodies kind of resemble it, but of course the playing style is death metal. but I think they're kind of a combo of those two styles of music. They have been since day one. They still are now, but they have really put a lot of variety into their formula. And I think, like I said, I think I know this isn't their most recent album I'm showing off. It's just one of my favorite album covers, hence why I'm showing it off. But I think they do a great job of really just going step to step and just getting better and better with time. So there's that style of changing, right? Stylistically. Now, I'm about to show probably the most infamous example in metal of a stylistic change. Probably know what it is before I even show it off, and of course, it's this. It's Metallica's Load, right? This was a complete shock to the system when it came out. They went from being Metallica went from being the premier. In one album they go from being the number one metal band, the premier metal band, to they basically did a complete 180, changed everything about the band as much as they could. They even changed their logo, right? And looking back on this album now, I can definitely appreciate it, right? But it was a complete left turn that no one expected. So I don't need to go on and on about this, right? So what do I feel? Do I feel metal bands owe the fans anything? Do I think because we're fans of this band that they should stay essentially in a box for us, right? Like, okay, well, I like this band, so they have to do this style of music, and if they go outside of it, they've changed too much, and I don't like them anymore. I would say that's an unreasonable thing for us to expect as fans, right? I think evolution and change is very important for a band because you really don't want a band that just keeps making the same album over and over and over again, because then it gets really boring. And of course, how much change you're willing to accept is going to vary a lot fan to fan, right? Now, that being said, even though I just said, yeah, I think we should largely accept the change of an artist if we like the artist and we continue to like their work. That being said, sometimes you can't take it too far, one album to the next, right? It is definitely possible to go too far in another direction, right? And fall flat on your face if you do. Not that I feel that Load's a total failure, but there are albums that are. There was that terrible Morbid Angel album that I can't remember the name of. It got universally panned and it deserved it. Megadeth's Risk got fairly well panned and it wasn't that great. So yeah, I mean there are definitely albums that where they go in another direction and fell flat on their face. But I always think that's better than like an album where they play safe and it's boring. Like an example of a Megadeth album where they played safe and I just find it boring is The World Needs a Hero. Same thing for Iron Maiden's The Final Frontier. I just don't like those albums because to me they're just formulaic and not very inspiring. Even though they are in the mold of those bands' musical styles, I just don't think they're good albums. So it's almost more interesting to hear them try something entirely new and fail. But as fans, we have the power to just not listen to that music. I don't think that just because a band puts out a very stylistically different album that you may not personally like for whatever reason, I don't think that means all of a sudden, oh, well, now we can't listen to that band anymore, because all of the music that you used to love from that artist is still there, and you can still listen to that. So that's pretty much what I choose to do. If a band puts out something that I don't like, I just don't listen to it, and I move on. I will keep an eye on that artist if I was a fan of them and see what they do next. And if they do something that I like next, then great. If not, well, oh well. There's plenty of other bands to listen to. And that's kind of how I view it. Because there's so much stuff out there. If you don't like what one band is doing, just listen to something else. Plenty of other stuff out there. Life's too short to hold a grudge like that. So anyway, that's pretty much it. Thanks so much for watching. As always, live long and prosper. Keep on rocking.